What's up, everyone? We are live on this special live show. We have the creators, well, I should say the team, Mr. Cullen Bunn, Blacky Shepherd, the Reanimator The Eternal Lie. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great.
Yep, I'm
Glad
doing
to be here.
And Jay, of course.
I'm always good, man. It's tough to put me in a bad mood, especially on a night like tonight, man.
I'm surprised you don't have a beer in your hand.
I know
Let's think about that.
You know what? It's Tuesday, dude. Wednesday is my drinking day.
Oh, there you go. Real quick in the chat, I just want to say hello, Mr. Roger Levesque, John Ingram, Jose Quintanilla, Michael Benson, Uncanny Swag, Pressable Defects is here, Dave in the Cave, Emerald Knight, all the regulars, and then some where people are going to be filling in as we go on. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. I'm really excited because we kind of got a sneak peek at this book. But Cullen, would you like to touch really quick what we're all about here tonight and all about Reanimator?
Yeah, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the book that Blacky and I are doing. That's on. It's through Dynamite Comics. They're funding it through Indiegogo right now. It's called Reanimator The Eternal Lie. It's a big 40-something page issue that kind of takes the. I mean, we all know the story of Reanimator at this point from the movies and the original short stories and all the comics. But this takes that story of Reanimator and kind of takes it back to formula, and it's a direct sequel to the original short story, but then it puts the Reanimator mythos in a whole new light and goes in a completely new weird direction.
Weird's a good word. And we were talking beforehand, it is almost creepy and scary. It was, I mean, Blacky, you killed it on the book, I gotta say.
Thank
the
you,
whole 1920s vibe, you felt it. Like you really did.
That was one of the most exciting parts of it for me was getting to draw, a period piece, as it were. I'm a big fan of like noir, and so I really want to do something set in the 40s, and then I that doing something set in the 20s, like the late 20s. I think, Cullen, it takes place in what, like 27.
Yeah, something like that. The original short story was, 25-ish, something like that. So the big thing we wanted to do was one of the big things to set it apart from the Reanimator stories you've seen or maybe more familiar with. They have all updated it time-wise. They're all set in the modern era. But we wanted to really set it apart. So we made this story. It's set just a few years after the original short story. So yeah, late 20s or so.
You definitely feel it, and you did a great job with the writing because the dialogue is like, I mean, I feel like it's spot on. Jay, what do you think? You got your hands on it?
Yeah, and I felt the same way with Vampirella versus the Reanimator, guys. You guys absolutely killed that. And from the first panel, Blacky, I want to just thank you, because now I look at Herbert West. I don't look at him as Combs anymore. I look at him as your Herbert West. So that's a big favor, man, to do that. And just going back to the Vamp book, man, the interiors that you did on that, from the opening scene where it's a ton of chaos in that library-esque room until when Vampirella is fighting the werewolves. Guys in the chat, if you haven't checked it out, check it out, because it has that. And I know you're a big fan. I did my research. I know you're a big fan of Bernie Wrightson, and you kind of model some stuff around it. And it has that old school horror-esque comic book feel that I love. It's great. It's like the old creep shows and the old,
That was the big idea. I asked them, if we could do it in grayscale, because I really wanted to get that Warren magazine vibe. And all the old Warren, the Vampirella and the creepy and the eerie, they were all in that kind of grayscale. I don't know how well it translates, but so after I scanned the original pencils and I was doing the kind of the doubled pencils and throwing the grayscale in there digitally, I actually overlaid a paper texture right? So it has like a grainier kind of quality to it. I did the same thing in Reanimator as well. I added kind of a grainy kind of paper texture, and it shows up in certain places better than others. If you look really close, you can see kind of a graininess to it. I wanted it to look like it was printed on that old paper stock, you know.
Yeah, it had that feel right off the bat. And I got to be honest with Cullen. When I first read this, I'm like, how is Vampirella and the Reanimator going to fit together? And it just fit together. The trade paperback went so fast for me. I'm like, this is insane what you guys did with it. So I was super excited to read this book. And Gary, I'll let you get into it. But again, thank you for taking Herbert West and making him, now I think of you and I think instead of Combs. So that was great.
High praise, sir. Thank you, man.
You guys must be having fun with the characters, the settings, everything, because to go from, this is what, your third in the series, or at least with these characters?
This is the second thing we've done
Counting Vampirella
with Reanimator, yeah.
And you
guys worked on the Voltron together.
We did Voltron, and Pumpkinhead, and then Vampirella versus Reanimator, and then Reanimator.
Right.
I want to swing over and show my screen because I want to show you guys in the chat the Indiegogo, which you're close. So you're trying to hit here. I'll even show these guys. You're trying to hit that 10,000 goal really close to hit this. The promo card. Everybody in the hobby knows how the cards these days are going crazy. So to get this basically added at any level, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So if you're backing this at any level, we are really close to hitting it for these guys. So I want to share and show you guys. Now I hit it in the chat already, but let's go through this really quick. You guys have a lot to offer on here. There's a lot of different backings. You guys can see this, right?
Yes.
Yep. It's
all right. So the first thing, you guys just released this, correct?
Yeah, I think a week ago, if I'm correct.
This is the Jesse James?
Yeah, he's a retailer out of, I want to say, Arizona.
He doesn't look, he's not in a good spot right now.
Yeah.
So you have, this is your cover, correct?
Yeah, I did that work. Yep.
There's multiple backings. There's a game, and these are the 4 covers that are available now to back this guy up. This I really want to get into the story, but I know we kind of can't.
Yeah, guys, you got
a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot of spoilers in that. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about the story too much, and this is a problem we had to some degree, even with putting promo images and everything out.
Yeah, right here.
There comes a point in the book where every other page is a big spoiler to the
It's almost like you just said, like everything is relative to the story. There's nothing's wasted.
Yeah, it's a good read, guys. It goes quick, and I like that it's set back in the in the 20s.
Yeah,
that panel when they roll up to the city is where you cover the skyline.
The Innsmouth. Yeah.
Oh man, that the dark. The colorist, the darks and the grains and the wood. It was just.
Yeah, and that all ties into the in addition to kind of resetting the story and moving it back to the 20s, we wanted to tie the Reanimator mythology, I guess. The original Reanimator story was not connected to the bigger Cthulhu mythos. So we wanted to take it and connect it to that side of things a little more aggressively. So that city, for instance, that's the city of Innsmouth, which is plays a huge role in some of the Cthulhu mythos, and yeah, Blacky just did such a great job on bringing that to life.
So there's several of the higher end backing stuff still available, and you're involved here, are you not?
Yeah, that's my work.
These are still available on the Indiegogo, and then
those are examples of character sketch, right? So a person who backs at the character sketch level, they don't have to pick Lady Demon or Vampirella. Those are just the ones that Dynamite wanted me to do just as examples. I mean, I'll do any character anybody wants, you know.
And now this is your cover as well, correct?
Yeah, that's the pencils for the B cover.
I mean, there's a lot still available, and there's an original sketch here as well.
Yeah, that's not me. I don't remember that artist's name.
It is. I think it's on the Indiegogo.
It is, yeah.
Right. So there's still a lot available out there. So after this, do you guys have plans to work together on something else?
Never again.
Hopefully, volume 2. I hope that's the answer.
Yeah.
Because I'm in limbo. I'm like, oh man, I can't. I didn't want it to end. I'm like, holy smokes! Now I need to know more. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's a big part of this is so the book's funded. I mean, it has definitely. I mean, it's going to be out there. So if you back this project, you're going to get the book. But one of the goals for us is, and I don't know what the number is. There's a certain tipping point for Dynamite that if it reaches that, they'll greenlight book 2, which is they'll immediately greenlight book 2. Because yes, we have a bigger plan for this story. I would like to see it at least 3 or 4 parts to it, but I think it could go beyond that even if we really wanted it to.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How far is this going to go? Is it going to be a mini series? Is it going to be almost like an unlimited? Guys, everybody in the chat, listen. You got to read this book. It leaves you left on a cliffhanger almost, and it's like this.
Not almost. It's about as cliffhangery as one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It actually ends on like 2 cliffhangers. Like
I was just going to say that.
Things going on.
Two major cliffhangers.
Yeah, it's I believe that I'm all for long ongoing series, but I believe that the very best stories have endings. So there is an ending in mind for this story that I think would be, like I said, 3 or 4 of those 40-page issues would wrap it up completely. But that said, I also see a world where it could be expanded beyond that too.
Like if I could write the book on how it played out, there would be, like Cullen says, 3 or 4 of the prestige format that in my mind would be kind of, how back in, I don't know how much they do it these days, but it used to be where, like, I'm trying to think of an example. They do like a movie, right? Like a movie of the week on CBS, right? And then that would spin off into like a TV series, right? So like, I think Knots Landing did that. They did like the Knots Landing movie, and then they spun it off into a TV series. I probably watched too much Knots Landing as a kid.
You don't know if they still do the Knots Landing format on television?
I may be a little bit removed, but
half the chat's like, "What's Knots Landing?" You're doing dating ourselves here.
Knots Landing,
it's the best, man. It was a spin-off of Dallas. How can you not love that? But I like 3 or 4 of the premium format, issues, the 40-page thick bad boys, and then maybe an ongoing 12-issue series that kind of tells the bigger plot, But it's not up to me,
It seems like there's a lot of story to tell, and like Jay, you said it, like you just didn't want it to end. Those are always my favorite stories, is when I don't want it to end.
But yeah, so the thing is, Herbert West is such a cool character, guys. You don't know what, like, his ideology behind his science and what he wants to get done. He's so dedicated to. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get his serum to work. And that, going back to Vampirella, that was great. I was like, when I said before, how is this going to work? I'm like, oh man, this is going to be crazy. And could I spoil a little bit of that?
Yeah, it's been out long enough.
Yeah. when he hits, when he hits Vampirella with the serum and all hell breaks loose against, the God of Death and Lady Death, I'm like, holy smokes, this is going insane right now. Yeah. And it seems like he always gets, even in this book, a little bit caught up in a little bit of woman trouble. He got caught up with, the Goddess of Death in the Vampirella book. So I'm like, this guy, he got a soft spot for women, a guy after my own taste.
Right.
The women, that's new to the comics. That wasn't in the short stories.
Yeah, it wasn't in the movie either.
Modernize it a little bit.
He's not a ladies' man.
Yeah. We got a question here, and I think I know the answer. Will this also be available through my LCS like other Dynamite titles? And I don't believe so.
I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. The discussions about this, and Cullen, you might know more than I do. The discussions about this have gone on for so long. Like the book's been done for a year. The discussions about this have gone on for so long that I don't know if they're planning on after it's done at the campaign, if it's going to be in the comic shops. I kind of don't think so. I just don't know.
Now, I'll tell you right now, the safest bet is to just go back the campaign. Now you know you're getting the book.
Absolutely, guys.
I mean, that's the easiest way. So, Colin, let me ask you this. How much do you have written after this? Is the story complete?
The story's complete up here, but I haven't written any of it, only because, like I said, there's a chance. The hope is this does well enough that they greenlight the next one. But I don't know. Who knows? It's crowdfunding, so who knows? And who knows when that will happen? If it. So I have not written anything yet because I got to get. Look, this is what I do for a living, so I can't write it and not it not get greenlit because then I don't cash a check.
It's up here though, right? It's all up here.
Oh yeah, this story. This is one of those that you think about it for so long. So I know exactly where this story's going. I know exactly what's next. And when I write one of these things, my outlines are pretty detailed, and I haven't gone even into the outline stage of this one. But I'm not worried about getting lost in the weeds of where the story's going because I know exactly where it's going. I know all the mileposts along the way, and I know where it wraps up. So that I'm not worried about. It's more about making sure we get that green light.
So Blacky, do you know where the story's going?
Only vaguely. I mean, I have a general sense from talking about it with Cullen, but I don't know how it wraps up. Here's the thing that sucks is I desperately want to see the rest of the story because as a fan of the story, I want to know where it goes because so I don't know if it's a good ending or a bad ending, you know what I mean, like relatively speaking for the people of the world that this is set in. I don't know who makes it and who doesn't. I have a vague sense of kind of what's next, but Bunn over there keeps it close to the vest a little bit.
Well, look, and I always have my even when we're dealing with a story, where we're really interacting a lot early on and talking about what we want to do with the book. I see the artist that I'm working with as my first reader, and I want to surprise Blacky with what's coming. I don't want him, I don't want him to know everything. And I think there are even moments in this one. There are moments in this one, that we can't talk about because they're such big spoilers. I wrote those thinking, this is gonna surprise Blacky. He's not gonna expect this one. Because my idea is, if I can get the artist excited about the story, then it's only going to help convey that excitement. The reader gets excited about it. It's just a way to really juice up the excitement levels. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, and you could see between the both of you, it translates right into your book, guys. And I'm not telling you that. I know you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but I tell people how it is, and you could tell it translates right into that book. That
I've gotten really lucky with the scripts that I've worked on with Cullen because like you said, he does genuinely write like that. Like when I read. It goes all the way back to Voltron. When I read Voltron, I'd get to a page and go, that's going to be so badass, and then with Pumpkinhead, it was every issue. There were 2 or 3 parts where I was like, I can't wait to draw that. That's going to be so badass,
Yeah.
And same with Vampirella versus Reanimator. And so in Vampirella versus Reanimator, they build that portal right? And he says, so first they build those spiders out of the corpses of the villagers, and then they use the rest of the corpses to make the big portal.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So bad.
And there's a great example, because Vampirella versus Reanimator, that was Blacky's idea. I mean, he was the one who originally came up with that story. He kind of had sort of an idea of where he wanted it to go.
It's very skeletal, Cullen,
but
the story.
But then once I got to scripting it, I'm like, well, I still got to surprise him with some stuff. I can't let that all be, I don't want him to know what's coming completely.
Yeah, and it's crazy that you mentioned the Voltron, because I went back and looked at the Voltron, and your range as an artist was crazy between the Voltron and between the stuff you did with Reanimator. And I'm like, holy smokes, this guy went from like, a robot made of all different types of parts, like, whatever it is, 8 different, exactly, to almost like a cult horror book where it's like it's up there with Bernie Wrightson, man. Like the art, guys, go check out the art. The art is insane. The story is insane.
I mean, I don't want to go back and use this word, but it felt creepy reading the book and looking at these pages and dark and just spooky almost.
That's a huge compliment for both Cullen and I mean, because that's the mark, right? That's what you want, is you want something that's actually going to have a visceral impact on the reader, and I think especially with this one, the Reanimator story, there's so much in there that's so twisted, at the story level, that then I get it and I'm thinking, okay, so, that's a lot, that's shoes to fill, right? Because I've got to bear the weight of how twisted the story is. And so then I'm trying to think, okay, what can I put into the art that's going to really sell the twisted nature of it? So there's little grace notes that I tried to put in all around. Like you'll notice on one page, there's a panel where, Herbert West is working at his desk, and in a pan to his left is 3 heads that he's sewn together and then reanimated, you know what I mean? And they're just like screaming, I was just trying to come up with the weirdest, creepiest stuff I could.
You kind of are answering my next question was, when you as an artist are really into a script, I mean, you got to go that extra mile. You almost have to.
Yeah.
So all right, we got a question actually from Michael Benson. This is a good one. Along with Lovecraft and Wrightson, any other influences for you guys with the story?
Blacky?
Well, for me, artistically, Bernie Wrightson is probably my main influence. I wear him on my sleeve. I'm an unabashed, worshiper of the god that is Wrightson. But artistically, also, like Michael Golden is a huge influence on me. Kelly Jones is a big influence, especially with respect to like horror stuff. Kelly Jones is huge. I've got a lot of Dave Stevens in my DNA, especially when I draw women. I draw a lot of Dave Stevens in there, and then as far as like, when I think of horror, there are certain writers that inform my, point of view, so obviously Stephen King, a lot of Clive Barker, his sense of kind of twistedness has really informed the way I draw, because I'm always trying to think of how to draw something that doesn't fall into rote and doesn't just look like the same thing that everybody else is drawing.
Right.
I think I remember in an interview, Cullen mentioned a guy named Robert McCammon, who I'm a huge fan of. You like Robert McCammon, right? As a writer?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He's a big influence on me. He's another writer that is deceptively weird. Like at first you think you're reading a story and it seems fairly straightforward, and then he dives into some really deep, weird potholes,
Yeah, and as far as, I don't know that I can name a writer, that's necessarily influenced this story. It's more influenced by, the circle of Cthulhu. I mean, the Cthulhu mythos have been expanded for decades now by numerous other writers, to the point that I'd say most of what people recognize as the Cthulhu mythos was created by someone other than Lovecraft. I mean, they've all been, the stories have been expanded by numerous writers, very talented writers, artists, just for decades now. So if I was going to say an influence for this story, strangely enough, if you were to look over here at this shelf, I have shelves and shelves of role-playing game supplements for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. And I really think if I think about things that have influenced the story, it's all the games I've played in the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, because it's, you know, that game system really throws everything in and lets you come up with mythologies and can make your own, you know, myths and connect things in interesting ways. So I would, you know, I think just playing that game for so long and all the people who contributed to that game, because there's some really great material. I mean, there's some really great, not just gaming material, but just really great think pieces and fiction that was created, all associated with that role-playing game. And I
just to tack on
played it in years, but I keep it on my shelf over here just for inspiration.
Just to tack onto that, so I've got a book that was published by Chaosium several years ago now called the Encyclopedia Cthulhiana.
Oh yeah.
Do you have that? Yeah.
Oh.
That, man, I probably cracked that thing 25 times while I was, especially when I was like trying to figure out how I wanted to draw the deep ones and, you know, the different entities that show up.
Yeah, we can't get too much into it.
Yeah.
I see G Malo. I see 4 books for Vampirella versus Reanimator. Is that the complete run?
Yeah, it was a 4-issue series.
There you go, Gene. And Dave in the Cave with that $5 super chat. Props to Jay, Gary, Cullen, and Blacky. Just bought in on the Indiegogo.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You
Dave.
won't regret it.
Yeah, you're not going to be disappointed. And I would tell you, everyone, to go back and read the Vampirella story first, man, because it's going to set that tone for the next one, even at different time periods and a different story. But you'll get the idea, guys.
So, getting a little off Reanimator, what were your inspirations as an artist and a writer other than for this series? Like, what got you guys into the field, basically?
Well, look, you know, I've wanted to tell stories since I was a little kid, and I've loved comics since I was a kid. I grew up in the glorious era of being able to go to a garage sale and get a stack of comics for next to nothing. And I used to go to the flea market every weekend. There was this guy that sold out of the back of a pickup truck. He sold grocery sacks.
I know that guy.
For $5, you could get 50 comic books, and you could buy a grocery sack of Marvel, a grocery sack of DC, or a grocery sack of independent, like, you know, it was usually Charlton and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I would, you know, my dad would take me and I'd buy a grocery sack of comics, and I just loved them. I mean, you know, who knows what I would get. But comics were a big part of my life, and I always wanted to tell stories. So when I started really trying to make a living as a writer, it was a no-brainer for me to try my hand at comics. I didn't care what form these stories took shape of. I didn't care if I was writing short stories or novels or movies or video games or whatever, but comics obviously were important to me. So that was one I definitely, you know, tried my hand at.
When I was, I was little. My uncle took me to see a movie called Inframan, which was a Shaw Brothers, like a Chinese, almost like Ultraman. I don't know which one came first, Ultraman or Inframan, but the same kind of basic idea, right? And that movie lit me up, right? It really fired my imagination. And so I'm going to say 2 or 3 years later, by this time I'm probably 7 or 8, my dad brought home a box like what Cullen's talking about. He brought home a box of just comics, just random assortment of comics, everything from Archie to Charlton to some old Marvel to see the whole 9 yards. And I remember writing a letter to Stan Lee where I drew Inframan and wrote out all of his powers that I remembered as best I could and said, hey, you should do a series of Inframan and let me draw it. So that, you know, that was my first stab at getting into the industry.
What did Stan say when he wrote you back?
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, flash forward to, again, I don't remember how old I was, but I got my hands on the Ultraman is 66.
There you go.
He was early 70s. I think he came out in like 74 or maybe 75, but I could be wrong. You know, internet, do your thing. But anyhow, so I got my hands originally on a couple of issues of the Micronauts, the first run of the Micronauts, and I think it was
now you're in early 80s.
right.
No, 70s still.
Late 70s. I'm sorry. See?
70s.
Micronauts #1. That's a big spec book, guys. You want to grab that one?
By this time, let me see. This was probably 82, I would bet, when I first got my first issue. Maybe 83, the first issue of the Micronauts that I got my hands on. And the art, it was a Michael Golden issue. And the art just blew my mind, right? And by this time I was serious about drawing, right? And so I was drawing all the time. And the story, it was just really good, real science fiction, much more so than most of the comics that were out, you know? And so I went back, and that's what prompted me to go find out what a comic store was and buy my first back issues and, you know, the whole deal. And it was all, and then from there, I started getting into like creepy and eerie. And when I was 10, I think I did my first real criminal act. I stole a copy of Vampirella, the magazine.
Nice.
From
Everyone hear that?
Gas or whatever. Yeah, and it was by that time my DNA had been written, you know, artistically. I'd gotten my Bernie Wrightson fix, I'd gotten my Michael Golden fix. Right around then I discovered Bill Sienkiewicz because he did an adaptation of Moby Dick that I've still got it. It's one of my favorite all-time comic books ever. And so yeah, that just set me on the path. And so it was kind of, I got away from it. I went to college and I was in bands and, you know, kind of got away from drawing. I lost my focus. And then I was developing video games for this company and it was killing me. So I walked away from it and started drawing comics.
Look, you're getting all the credit here. You are correct with Inframan, released in 1975.
In all fairness, that's right in the middle, late and early 70s.
Yeah.
So you're both right.
That's right.
You're both pretty. It's
very
okay.
diplomatic. Very diplomatic.
I mean,
All right,
in a band, drawing for comic books, developing video games. This is what I dream. This is what I aspire to be in life, Blacky. Help me out, dude.
Hey, man, I didn't get paid much at any point during any of that. Developing a video game, I was basically living check to check, right? So the woman who was kind of funding it, she was terrible at the job. And so like she would find backers and I'd be like, hey man, rent's due in a day, you know, go find a backer and send me a check, you know, for $300, you know.
What video game were you on?
It never got released. It was Equator. And it was, you know, the game would have been cool. You know, the problem was, not to diverge too far from our discussion, but she had the idea of 4 girls on a scientific discovery mission on an island. And I told her, I'm like, that's not a game. That's a
porno.
That's a base. Yeah. That's you know,
a scientific discovery.
A game out of it. I designed a bad guy and a plot and the whole deal and started doing, you know, concept art. And we had meetings with some pretty heavy hitters. The people at Valve, met some people at Microsoft. I wound up doing one presentation on this dude's like custom built 77-foot yacht.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was around the biggest money. And but it fell through. She kept trying to make it an educational video game. And I could see it every time we'd be in a meeting. She'd say educational video game and people's eyes would just glaze over. They'd be like, sorry, no checks coming today, you know.
Yeah. It's like when you're a kid and your parents are gonna take you to the educational toy shop. You're like, you know, come on.
Yeah, there's a Toys R Us 3 blocks away.
Oh. So you guys are talking about comics, and when Brian Polito was on here, we talked about his personal collection. So I want to ask you guys, do you still collect? Do you still read? What do you have in your personal collection that you just love?
Great question.
So at one time when I was young, I had arguably the best collection in North Carolina, where I grew up at the time. And I'm talking a complete run of X-Men, Amazing Fantasy 15, a complete run of Spider-Man. I mean, we had all these, you know, plus just thousands of other issues.
Was that from the guy at the garage, at the back of his truck?
No, I mean, a lot of the collection was probably bulked up with that stuff, but those were not out of the grocery sack. I mean, my dad at the time, he had his own business that was doing very well, and it was nothing for him to walk into. He was not into comics. He didn't read them at all, but he loved going to comic shops and going to conventions and wheeling and dealing. He loved going up to, I mean, it was nothing for him to, go into a convention. I remember there was a table of old, pre-94 issues of X-Men, and he just went in and said, how much? And there's, well, for which one? He's like, no, I'm going to buy them all, but you've got to cut me a deal. And he would do that, time and time again. So I had a really great collection of comics, and I sold them all to pay for college. And I stopped collecting after that. I sold everything. Every comic I had was gone. And I paid for, several years of college with that collection. But, and I stopped collecting for a long time, and then I slowly got back into it a little bit, little by little. So my collection now it's nowhere near what it used to be. I mean, I have a lot of comics. Most of them are worth dirt. I'm 10 issues away from regaining my Uncanny X-Men collection. That was the one that it really hurt for me to sell. So I'm missing.
Oh, nice.
10 issues. What are you missing? Let me write this down.
The tough one, the only tough one that I'm missing still is 4.
Oh,
which right now is really
this guy.
Yeah, that one. That's the only.
You literally have it right.
That's the tough one I'm missing right now.
That
Honestly,
one's, you know what? That's tough,
say.
man, because that one's expensive right now with WandaVision and going
fire
on.
right now. Careful.
That's the only one that is still got a little bit of little bit of money, that's worth a little bit that I still need.
I've only found that book twice, and both times it's in rough shape. I don't know what it is about that book, but it's tough.
Yeah, and really my favorite thing in my collection right now is I'm into I get my floppies bound into hardcovers. So I collect a run of something, I send it off to a guy, he chops them up, binds them into hardcover.
Yeah.
So in the other room, I have shelves and shelves of bound hardcover books.
I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah,
and I wanted to message you and plead with you to stop.
Never.
I think about it.
And let me tell you, now, I haven't bound my X-Men collection, and I won't do that. But I have bound things that would turn your hair white.
That's a lot of hair to turn white. That's a lot of white hair.
I've bound books that people just they can't believe I would ever do that, and I'm like, that's okay. I don't.
So it's funny. Blacky, I want to hear your answer too. But to touch on the binding before, and Jay, you might appreciate this too. Before they came out with the new 52 Batman Omnibus, the first part, because it is going to be 2 parts, I had the whole run. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bind it, because don't they shave a little bit too? Like cut a little off the top and off the bottom? They do on
mine. Yeah, I have them shave them up so that it's all square.
Yep. And I couldn't do it.
It's not for everybody, but I can tell you this: since I started doing that, I'm actually reading the books again instead of letting them stay in a closet and they're in a box somewhere that I'll never. The books that are in my comic book closet in there, chances are I'll never read them because I'm not going to dig through those boxes to get those books out. But I read the ones that are on the shelf out there. So and it kind of got me excited about collecting books again, because most of the time I'm not doing anything that's worth anything. Because a lot of those are already collected anyway. But the books I'm getting collected are things that are never going to get, chances are never going to get bound up the way I want them to.
All right, Blacky, you're up.
So let me see. My story is oddly enough kind of similar to Cullen's. When I was a kid, I started, collecting comics. And very early on, I was, very careful about condition, and the act of collecting and putting them in bags and boards really appealed to me. I liked reading them and then putting them away and then getting the whole stack. And I had a collector mentality, and I did that from about the time I was about 10 until I got out of high school and joined the Army. So a solid 8 or 9 years, right? I think I joined when I was 19, and so when I joined the Army, I had an uncle that had kind of a spare shed behind his house. I said, hey, let me put my comic book collection in. And like many comic book collectors, I have that story where someone who didn't know what they were just gave them all the goodwill, right?
Yeah.
And so my entire collection just went goodbye. And I'm talking like the original Secret Wars, Long Shot, a lot of old X-Men, a full run of Micronauts, ROM, all the stuff I was into, right? A lot of old eerie and creepy and Vampirella magazines, everything. It just broke my heart, okay? But I did have a small box of like some stuff that I had people send to me out of my collection. So I had my that 4-issue Rocket Raccoon, just stuff that I was really keen to read again, right?
You're in like the early mid 80s right there with all that stuff.
Yeah, that was my sweet spot. Was when I was really buying the comics that interested me.
X-Men and Teen Titans. Everybody, I feel like in the early 80s to X-Men and Teen Titans.
I wasn't a Teen Titans. I'm solidly Marvel. Aside from a couple of characters, I'm solidly Marvel.
I got to tell you, I was 1000% X-Men only. I was like, I'm an X-Men fan. And I went to a comic book store on their birthday. They were like celebrating their anniversary. And I was digging through X-Men back issues, and there was this skinny dude dressed as Superman walking around. He was like, he was there with the store, but I remember vividly him walking by, and he says, "Nobody steal any of these comics, or I'll burn your butt with my heat vision." And I remembered that, and then he came up to me, and we stayed there all day because they were giving away like the first 10 issues of G.I. Joe, and I really wanted to win those 10 issues. But he walked up to me and he said, "You like X-Men?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, come over here. I'm going to show you a book that you're going to like just as much." And he showed me the Wolfman and Perez Teen Titans issues. And I was in. I bought like a few of them, and then I was in. That series was so good. Good.
I have gone back and read some of it since then. And I kind of wish I would have been into it then, but I was, and still am primarily Marvel. But at the time, I was just dyed in the wool Marvel. But so when I was in the Army, I was stationed in Alaska, and there was the one comic shop in Fairbanks, right? And so I would go there, and this is about between 92 and 96, right? And comics were not what we'd call great during that period.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically the day I was reading, it was one of the issues of the Clone Saga, the Spider-Man Clone Saga. And I threw it down. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with comics. They're the worst ever. And I completely quit comics. By that time I'd lost my whole collection, and I didn't like the comics that I was reading. And I kept getting like the Dark Horse Star Wars and Alien stuff. I was buying like Alan Moore stuff, like his From Hell series. I was buying that. And I started getting into like really obscure indie stuff, and a lot of horror comics, but I was completely out of the mainstream. And then when I got out of the service, I stopped reading comics entirely. I just forgot about it. That's when I started doing bands and, the whole thing.
Girls.
And it was a few years after I moved to Seattle. I moved to Seattle to do the Art Institute. And
what year was that?
2000.
Okay.
And so around 2000, I want to say 8, I've been working in the video game industry and bartending and just a little bit of this, that, and the other thing. And I'd started running tech support departments because I needed a big boy job. And there was a comic shop next to the tech support joint. And I walked in, and what got me was Dynamite, oddly enough, because they were doing a really good Shadow series and a really good Vampirella series and a really good Warlords of Mars series. And then that was when The Boys was coming out.
I was just going to say, like, The Boys in that time period.
The Boys. And then Avatar was doing Crossed, which was right up my alley because I love that splattery gore. And Jason Burrows' art on Crossed just absolutely destroyed me. And so I just started picking up, again, mostly horror stuff or like pulp stuff. I never really got back into superheroes. Every now and then I would pay attention to like something that would come out. Like I've always been a big Moon Knight guy. So anytime something Moon Knight comes out, I'll pick it up. But by and large, unless it's Moon Knight or a handful of characters, I'm mainly a horror guy, horror and pulp.
Well, this chat is starting to light up. We've got pushing 100. So, guys, let's go back to Reanimator. I want to get this back in here. I'm going to throw the link back in the chat like that. So, you guys are close to hitting that 10,000, to unlocking that first goal. And to show everyone one more time, it's the trading card from the Vampirella Reanimator series, correct?
Well, no, they just Dynamite just asked me to do a kind of a mashup drawing of Vampirella Reanimator and Lady Demon, who's I think one of the Chaos characters that they have. Which actually, once I started drawing her, I went back and researched her. She's a really cool character. I want to pitch Dynamite on a Lady Demon comic because I've got a great idea for it. But that aside, no, that was just they just asked me to do a random kind of mashup.
So I'm going to share my screen too, just to show everybody. The link is in the description. Let's do this one more time, going through here again. Reanimator. This is what I wanted to show right here. The 4 covers. And there are like multiple ways to back this.
Yep.
There's
multiple covers, multiple ways, if you guys see on the right side, to back this. And
before you come off of this, go down and show the T-shirt. I really like the T-shirt. I think people will dig it, and I think you can add the T-shirt on regardless of what level.
Yeah, it's an add-on, so you can back at whatever level appeals to you, and if it doesn't have the T-shirt included with it, you can just add on the additional amounts for the shirt.
There you go. And there's a lot of ways to back this. And Jay and I kind of got an early eye on this thing, and it's good, man.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I'm super proud of it, man. I mean, I think I said this either at the beginning of the broadcast or maybe before we started, but even if I wasn't on the book, I would be a huge fan of the book because it kind of hits everything that I love about comics. Here's the thing. I firmly feel that comics are the greatest storytelling medium that we've ever come up with. I prefer comics to movies or novels. I just think they are the perfect marriage of visual and intellectual stimulation, and so comics are central to my kind of happiness, and so when I find a comic that I love, I really deeply love it, and this is one of them that even if I didn't draw it, I would deeply love it because it's just it hits all the buttons for me. It's got the splattery gore, it's got the deep creepy factor, it's got it's
great
got
storytelling on top of all that.
Right. I love it, man.
I'm not sure if you guys if they back the slabs, do you still get the floppy?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that you could add the floppies on if you back the slabs. You can still add the floppies on if it doesn't come with it. But without me looking right there at it, I can't tell you for sure how they set that up. But you can get them. I don't think it's a problem getting them. But
does the syringe come as a perk?
Yeah.
Yes,
the pen is cool, man. I was gonna say we didn't touch. I was waiting to say that we didn't touch on the pen. The pen is great.
The pen comes with a lot there.
That syringe is an ink pen that, yes, it comes as a perk.
Yeah.
It's in almost, I think it's in everything you back.
I think it's every level offers the ink pen.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, I can't say enough positive things about this. Like, I want this to move on. I want to see the rest of the story. I want to read this thing. Like,
yeah, well, just to touch on that, now that there are more people watching, for anybody that wasn't there. So the idea is we have to hit a certain number, and like Cullen, I'm not super sure what that number is, where Dynamite will greenlight the second part of this story, because this issue ends on a couple of different cliffhangers. And we need, we really want to push the backers on this so that we can hit that number, so that we can continue the story. That is my main motivation. I just want to see the story continue.
Yeah, guys, do it for me. I need to know what happens. Seriously.
I want to know too. It's the art, the story, and we're not talking about a 22-page book here, right? I mean,
no, I think it's 40 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big book with a lot of story and more to tell. And it's up in Cullen's head. It's not even on paper yet.
And
That's
it's
right.
40 pages, guys, that goes like this. That's how much
Goes
I
quick.
enjoyed it. I'm like, holy smokes. This can't be over.
And if they don't greenlight the next one, and people come up to me at conventions and say, "What was going to happen?" My answer is this: not telling you. Sorry.
There you go.
Another cliffhanger.
In the Army, we used to say, "You don't know, do you?"
Yeah.
I think you guys will be. I think Volume 2 will be coming out very soon,
I hope
guys.
so. Fingers toesed and prehensile tail crossed.
I wanted to check, see if any deep dive comics. See this? I needed pictures in my stories. That's why comics and Playboy were my favorite things to collect in the 80s.
I actually have. That's funny that he mentions that. I assume I should be gender and specific. But I have actually started going back and buying certain key issues of old Playboys. This sounds like an excuse, but it's true. Like certain people get interviewed in an issue,
Read the articles.
a birthday month,
Yeah.
or
All right.
Blacky, I swear to God, I thought you were gonna say I worked for Playboy too. I was just gonna turn the camera off and say this guy's my idol.
Yeah, I would kill. I'd love to. I actually, what's funny is when I was probably too young to do so, I created my own kind of character. Do you remember Playboy used to have a kind of a comic that ran in it on occasion, and it was a character whose name I'm drawing a blank on, but I really loved it. One of my favorite artists is a guy whose name I'm not going to remember right now, but he did a character named Mandy. And he was one of the original Playboy artists. And so I created a character that she was kind of a spy, like a secret agent, rocket queen spy, that would wind up on the moon, with very few clothes, and you don't know how that works, do you?
Yeah, that was going to be my last question. How hard is it to draw a Vampirella with clothes on? I mean, there got to be doodles all over the place of this chick just naked, no?
Yeah, well, that's a common thread. So when I drew Vampirella for the Vampirella versus Reanimator, I based her on a cosplayer that I know named Joni Brosis, because I wanted her to have Joni's face. Because man, if you look at Joni Brosis, she is stunningly beautiful, and she looks like Vampirella to me. Plus, because Vampirella was going to be doing a lot of fighting, I wanted to give her kind of a less classic body. Like she's often drawn, very buxom, but I wanted her to have more like of a lithe, kind of a sleek frame, like a swimmer's body, because it's kind of action star-ish.
Yep.
But yeah, so then I'm trying to figure out how to make the costume work on her, and I wound up, I didn't want to go too skimpy because it had to look real,
Right.
But then it's Vampirella, man. Costume is a significant part of the draw,
Yeah. Either way, man, it was awesome. It was awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I hope I get to draw her again. If I do, I'll probably try to go for a more classic interpretation because, man, I'm just drawing a blank on all my favorite artists now. But the artist that he's a Mexican artist or a Spanish artist that drew Vampirella. He did the very famous door poster. Oh man, it really annoys me that I'm forgetting his name. But he's one of my favorites, especially as Vampirella artists are concerned. And I really, he's kind of the North Star when you draw Vampirella, at least for me.
We're getting close to that $10,000 goal. I hope that 10K is the number you guys need to get a volume 2.
I think it's more than that. I don't know exactly how much, but I remember when I saw the number, I was like, oh, come on, really?
Guys, come on.
A little bit.
All right. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on tonight?
I'm just hyped about the campaign. I really want, people to back it and enjoy it. Again, it's a story I'm super proud of. I think it's the art I'm most proud of that I've done in my career so far. It's as far as Cullen's work is concerned, I think it's some of his best. So I'm just hype about the campaign.
I mean, you guys should both be proud because it was really good. Like, I don't get creeped out and like, I don't know if scared's the right word, but like creeped out reading comic books, and you guys did a really good job, man. Really good job.
Well, look, there's some. It's again tough with not spoiling it, but there's some stuff that that Blacky draws in this issue, and I've mentioned it elsewhere. But there's there are some creatures that show up, and they've been depicted in different stories, movies, comics, whatever. They've been depicted many times, and in the script, I said, I want this, I want to use this creature, but I don't want it to look like it has ever looked before. And Blacky just took that and it just, I mean, I don't even know how to describe what he did. It is to me, it's my favorite page in the book. It's the one I wish we could show people.
Yeah.
Because it's so crazy, this thing he drew and the way he drew it. I mean, there was no holds barred on what he drew.
Oh, actually on the Indiegogo is the page I was talking about, which was the city.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I really like that page.
Well, it was very important to me, when drawing it. I really wanted to get into the texture of what we were looking at, because a big part of the horror is the texture of it. Like, I'm a big fan of horror films from the 70s, and a big reason for that, I think, is the way they're photographed and the way that the cinematography happens. It's neither one of those guys. It's Gonzalez. Jose Gonzalez is my all-time favorite. But both of those artists that were mentioned in that chat are amazing. Man, they didn't have a bad artist back then for Warren doing Vampirella. But anyhow, the cinematography and the way that those films were photographed, it almost made it scarier just by the way it was photographed, how grainy and how textured everything felt. And so that was really important to me. Plus, when you set something in the past, especially something like Innsmouth, it's described so many times as being rotten and mildewy and just kind of
just dirty and grimy and just run down almost.
I really wanted that to come through in the art.
It did. It absolutely did.
I think I got an email from my editor at Dynamite, because I might not have been turning in pages as quickly as he would have liked. And at one point he said, "Stop drawing bricks."
Oh, yeah. Well, you could even tell, man, the backgrounds look amazing.
Well, that's one of the things that has always been important to me as an artist, is I don't want to be construed as a lazy artist that, just kind of BS's the background and doesn't pay any attention to it. Because to me, the background is just as important as informative as the foreground,
Yeah.
Jay, is there anything else you wanted to ask these guys? Because
guys, I wish you all the best of luck. I thank you for taking time out of your night to be with us. The book was great. I can't say enough good things about it. Guys, I tell the truth in the chat. You want to pick this up. You want to read it. You want to get these guys. Once you do read it, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about on why we need volume 2, guys.
Yeah.
So this is why you have to pick that book up. Always I ask artists, Blacky, are you open for commissions? Do you do stuff like that?
Yeah.
What's the best way to find you?
You can find me on the interwebs. My site is CQ Shep, so CQSHEP.com. It's got the information for commissions there, or just find me on Twitter or Instagram. On Twitter, I'm CQ Shep. On Instagram, I'm ArtDevil313. I really need to get all those together, and
you're definitely gonna get an email from me, because I love collecting original art, and it'll be something definitely cool to have in my collection.
Yeah, I love to do commissions. And I'm always open for them. And you can find me. I'm pretty sure I have been. We're following each other, very Gary. On Instagram, so I'm sure if someone knows where you are, they can find me.
There you go. And we got Spidey's powdered tumblers. Look, he said he just bought a 9.8 slab, so that's another one down, guys.
There you go.
Thanks,
Roger wanted to Say thanks, Blacky, for not making it too confusing.
Hey,
He's
it's all for you, man. It's all for you.
he's like the many-headed Hydra of internet. Man.
He's all over the place.
And once he deletes one, he's just going to make two other ones that just don't make any sense. They're not connected.
And Cullen, when I do see you at a convention, I am going to ask you what's going on with this story.
Yeah, me too.
That's the answer he said he's going to give everyone.
I'll give you answers. I'll charge for the answers.
There you go.
I'll
You
pay for the
can't
answer.
can't do commissions, so you might as well charge for the story.
$10 per plot point.
Yeah, I'll charge for hints, and I'll cut it off. It'll be like old time radio cliffhangers.
Yeah.
And then
There you go.
I'm gonna say, hey, Blacky, can I get a commission of what's gonna happen? Actually,
Well,
You don't even know.
yeah, exactly. I know.
It's gonna cost more because I'll have to find out from Cullen,
Yeah.
and he'll charge us.
You have to roll it into the commission.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way comics work now. Sorry, guys.
Is that all right, Blacky? Is this you right here?
CQ. No. So instead of Chep, it's Shep. So CQSHEP.
It is now. That's his new one. He's gonna set that up. Right now.
How's that?
I had a Mexican drill instructor. That's what it is. Yeah.
All right.
A Mexican drill, and he used to call me Shepherd.
Oh,
Well, thank you for your service. I got to say that. I mean,
Oh yeah,
that's worth noting and talking about.
It was my honor. If you ever get the chance to be an infantryman in Alaska, don't, because it's a bummer.
All right. One more time, guys. It is in the chat. It's also in the description of the video. This Indiegogo campaign, go back it. It's great, especially if you're into the horror, dark, creepy. It's a really good story, and I really want to know what's going to happen next. So, and Cullen won't say anything, so that's that.
I won't tell you what happens next until the book comes out. I probably would. I would probably tell you, but I'd rather you read it in a comic book form.
I would too. How's that? So that's it for us tonight, guys. Thank you, guys. Cullen, Blacky, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us, guys.
And
Yeah,
We appreciate it.
absolute blast. Jay, thanks for hanging, of course.
Of course, man.
And,
Two cool dudes
here.
right here, man.
We're gonna be here Friday night for our auction, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Are you auctioning off that X-Men #4?
I might throw that up there. I don't know. We'll see.
I'll give you $5 for it right now, and, then
$5, and you got to tell them what happened.
and I'll
The
tell
whole story.
Yeah, you got the full story.
I'll tell you every story. Look, tell me that $5. I'll tell you every story I've got planned for the next 3 years. I'll just call you every time I'm starting to work on one.
All right. We'll have to talk.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks again. I appreciate it. I had a blast.
Thanks,
and everyone in the chat, thank you for coming and asking these questions. And don't forget to back again. It's in the description down below. Thanks again to everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you on Friday.
Thanks, man.
Everybody.
Later.